Hello, everybody. Dr. Jonah Schenker. We are here again for Leading for Deeper Learning. I'm super excited about this podcast. Don't get me wrong, I love all the podcasts, but this one's extra special. We have students here with us today. That's what the work is about. We're going to be talking to our students here today about some of the changes in New York, thinking about their perspective around what it means to be a graduate here in New York. And if we're not thinking about students to inform our work as leaders, then we're not doing the right work. So let's get started. We are not in school. We just talked about that. We are at the studio, and I am super excited. I'm blessed. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to have a conversation to talk about school. And we're going to talk a little bit about New York Inspires. That's the language that the state has come up with that describes some of the changes that are happening here in New York. But before we go on, we have to talk about the two most important things. One is this is the first conversations we've had on Leading for Deeper Learning with students. So that's huge. And number two, we got the mugs here. So that's a good shout out. So let's talk a little bit about who I have the opportunity to talk with today. So just tell me your name, tell me your home district, and then your program at Ulster BOCES. Let's kick it off here.
I am Olivia Butler, and I go to Hudson Valley Pathways Academy, which is incorporated with BOCES, and I do Cisco and cybersecurity at BOCES.
Awesome. And that's a P-Tech school, Pathways and Technology Early College High School. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Hi, my name is Matthew Parkhurst. I go to Kingston High School, and I go to BOCES Career and Technical Center for HVAC.
Awesome. Thank you. You are Jada.
Jada Valles.
Yes, and your home district?
Kingston.
Kingston, and you are at the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning.
Yes.
Awesome. And what year are you?
25.
Awesome. Perfect. I like the name Jada. That's my daughter's name.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jada just pulled up with armed security, so that's pretty cool.
Yes. That's a whole other story about how we got Jada here, but we got Jada here. That's awesome. All right. So you ready to have a conversation? Awesome. So New York has transitions and changes on the horizon. You all have spent time in your home districts and then have decided to come to BOCES for a portion of your time, and all in different programs. But the New York State requirements for high school right now are 22 credits and 5 Regents exams. That's changing. Over the next couple years, Regents exams will no longer be required to graduate. There'll be an option to use those tests to show that you've excelled and you're proficient in some of the coursework, but that's just going to be one way. They want to talk about how can students show proficiency or skills in other ways. Really, really exciting stuff. They've also introduced this portrait of a graduate, and there's an expectation that all students in New York, as they move through kindergarten through their senior year in high school, will possess an upskill around these areas of critical thinking, problem solving, literacy across content areas, cultural competence, social emotional competence, global citizenship, effective communication. Again, really, really exciting, because these are the skills that we know to be needed in order to be successful, regardless of what you want to do in the future. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to have knowledge in math and science and history. Yes, that's all true. But the future you're going into is different than where we are currently now, right? So I am super excited about these changes. We're thinking about how do we help schools make these changes. Part of our work as a BOCES is helping schools figure out how to make these changes. And too often, we have adults thinking about how do we make these changes, and we forget to ask the most important people, which are the students. So this is this first start of that conversation to get some perspective from you all around what might that look like. And so I want to start off by, and I've shared, you all have a copy of this. If you think about these portraits or this portrait of a graduate, these skills, critical thinking, innovative problem solving, global citizenship. What does it mean? What do these skills mean to you? Do you see value? Do you think these are important? Why are they important? And how could you show somebody, what are some of the types of activities that you could show somebody that you understand what problem solving means or critical thinking means? Someone feeling like kicking us off?
I guess I could say this is going to mean a lot to students, especially me. I'm taking a look at effective communicator, and I think for teachers, they really need to take time to get to know their students, and not only getting to know every student altogether. I think there should be a time where a teacher and a student have one-on-one time, so they really get to know, like, if their head is down in class, they know something's wrong and they understand where they're coming from. And I really think that's important for all teachers to know.
So I agree 100%. I want to ask you a question. We had a short conversation before we started. You talked about in your current program that you've kind of built confidence to be able to present, talk to adults, network, effectively communicate. That didn't happen by accident. So there had to be something going on in your school that got you to practice what it means to do that. What does that look like? Because you told me before you didn't like that. Now you're sitting here in a studio having a conversation with me. Something changed. What did you do?
So when I came to P-Tech, I was very scared, honestly. I was very shy. I didn't talk to nobody. I didn't have any friends. But I would say a week or two later, I had a lot of friends. I think it's because the community is very small. We only have 50 kids in our whole school. So I would say the smaller community is very helpful. The teachers are like family. They're very nice, very sweet. They're like not therapists, but they are always there when you need them. Okay. They're very helpful, and they're very like, there's someone you can trust easily and someone that you can go to. So I think it's very important.
So what I'm hearing is not so much about maybe the activities that develop effective communication, but in your program, there's a priority for relationships, and that allowed you to feel comfortable and begin to talk and express yourself. Is that fair to say?
It's like very much having relationships with your students, I think, is a very important thing.
Okay. So I'm going to go over to you because I saw you nodding your head. As Olivia was talking about relationships and teachers caring, can you share a little bit about, do you feel, is that happening in your school as well? Yes? Is there any part of this portrait of a grad out of this diagram as you look through these things, critical thinking, problem solving, social emotional competence, is there anything that is kind of jumps out to you that you connect with, that you have any thoughts on?
I think all of these skills are great. And, if New York State implements a system in which you can graduate with one or more of these skills, that'd be great. Like initiative problem solver, for example. I mean, problem solving through life is a necessity. And I think social emotional competence is amazing too. Like having that, being able to grasp that skill would be like top notch. I think it would make New York students some of the best in the nation. And a lot of people lack that skill. I mean, for example, like let's say you're working a job and somebody gets upset at you, being able to get over it and just deal with the problem at hand, which correlates with problem solving. I think that is really good. And that is what's going to make New York State students probably some of the best in the nation, if not the best in the nation.
Are there current activities, projects, the way that school is going that you think are developing any of these skills? You mentioned earlier, again, you mentioned robotics, workplace learning challenges, Capstone. Are there any activities or the way that school is being delivered now that you think are making you stronger in any of these areas?
Social and emotional.
Okay, and what do you think's happening, or what's happening kind of that's helping that development for you?
Getting more socialization in the school, like talking to people more.
So more opportunities to connect with peers.
Connect with peers and students, staff, everybody.
Okay. Are there projects and things happening in your schools? Yeah. And in those environments where like project work is happening, let's think about two different school environments. Class where you go in, maybe there's an assignment on the board, you sit down, and then you're working on math problems, or you're beginning to compose an essay. There's that kind of structure. Or you go in and there's a question or a challenge or something for you to solve, and it's hands-on and it's a project. You love that stuff. Why do you love that stuff?
Because I like hands-on stuff.
So all of you have said, I love hands-on. I love hands-on. Let's go a little bit, try to get a little bit deeper underneath that. What about creating something or being able to use your hands? Right? And hands-on is like it's this big phrase, right? Hands-on could be theater, could be art, could be building something, construction-wise, versus kind of textbook and informational learning. You all said you love hands-on. Why?
I think because it builds, not only is it working with your hands and not staring at, a teacher while they're talking, I think it has a lot of things to it. It has communication, it's got social skills, and it's got the hands-on part. I think it builds a lot of relationships with your peers. If you do like a project, you guys are working together and you guys are communicating, so you get the job done.
Right. Do you think, and I want to hear from both of you about kind of what about this kind of concept of hands-on you really like. Do you think you can show that you've learned something through a project or presenting your project with the same way as a test? You think it should be equal? It is equal? Any thoughts on whether or not, like we would call it like assessment. How do teachers know that you've learned the things that they're trying to teach? One way is a test, right? You get a test, you take it, and they grade it, and they say, okay, you know this. The other, and there's lots of other ways, but you're talking about hands-on in projects, is you do something. Should they be the same? Should you be allowed to do that instead of a test? Can you show that you've learned things through hands-on?
I genuinely think that it depends on the subject. But most subjects, I feel like you are able to show in a hands-on way that you have grasped the idea of what they're trying to teach you. But in some instances, the only way is a test, and that's just how it's going to be. I think that the state needs to sit down and decide what those classes are going to be where you can show that, hey, I learned this through a hands-on way, and the classes where you have to take a test for that.
Right. So we've moved to straight advice to New York State that they should make a decision about certain subject areas that like culminate in an exam and maybe other subject areas where there are some flexibility.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll take it. We're gonna make sure they hear that. Let's go back because you had a chance to answer. You both said hands-on learning. You smiled, you nodded. Why? Why does that feel better? Why does it work better?
I think it works better for the people that understand and learn that way. But there are book people out there in the world that genuinely can't learn unless it's, on a book right in front of them, they're reading it or they're taking a test about it. But I think that if somehow we can make education more like flexible and, you can demonstrate this way that, you grasp the concept instead of doing it the test way or the book way, that would be great. I think options is what everybody needs. I don't think it should be limited to only one, if applicable. You know what I mean? It has to be possible.
It is applicable for sure. Anything you want to add about hands-on learning? What is it, or do you want to share something you've done that was hands-on that you enjoyed doing?
A bench.
building a bench.
Yeah, it was hard, but I got there.
So tell me, let me, can I ask you about the bench assignment? What class was that for?
Ruben
Okay, I got you. So that was
for Level Up.
for Level Up. And how was it introduced? Was there, did you have flexibility in what you were gonna build? Was it for a purpose?
Nah. Well, it was for a purpose. It was like for gardening, like boxes for like gardening, stuff like that.
Okay. So there was, it wasn't just, hey, let's build a bench, but there was a garden with boxes and we needed some benches in that area.
Real bad.
So you worked to build it. Is it, did you take it home or is it?
No, it's at the school right now.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a purpose for it. It's interesting that you bring that up because there's, we were talking earlier about engagement, right? And again, that's one of those like another big term that gets thrown out, but like, what does it really mean to engage? And there is this concept that's not in any of the things that I shared that we would talk about, but we're going to talk about it anyway, which we call the hierarchy of audience. And it's a complicated way to talk about what we ask students to do and who we ask them to do it for. So on the lowest level, low engagement is I'm going to ask you to memorize this stuff to then take a test. Low level of engagement. Do you agree that that's not always the most exciting, or does that excite you?
Yeah.
Right. Highest level of engagement is when you're working on something to be of service to community and world. So what got me thinking about that is your bench project. It wasn't just to build a bench. It was to build a bench that was needed in a garden for a school community, right? There's purpose behind that. And so I know you all have experiences. You shared one, so we'll come over here. Tell me a little bit about workplace learning, challenges, capstones, because those are where you're trying to do something for somebody else, right? To better a situation, to solve a problem. Examples of any challenges where that kind of audience wasn't the teacher, but it was for something larger?
I could say in robotics, robotics is a really big thing in P-Tech. It's actually just a big part of our school. When we're one big team, but we're separated into different groups throughout the school. So the build team, there's a very big amount of challenges they have to go through, and it's a very big issue if one of those things can't get fixed in time. We just got over with the season, and I believe our drive and our it's kind of hard to drive the robot. Me personally, I've never driven the robot, but it's like really hard to like focus and not be confused with the other robots that are in the match. But there's definitely a lot of problems, but they're always solved with their peers.
I got to watch one of those robotics tournaments, right? The challenge each year changes, and the design of the robot then needs to change, right? Like sometimes you got to like throw something or scoop something, or
it's according to
Right.
The challenge. Like this year, it was Reefscape and it was like water themed, so we had to take pipe tubes and we had to get them on a coral reef. So we had to make our robot to be able to do that and also throw balls up into a rack.
So you got students who are like designing, building, driving. There's other things too around communications, right?
We have like a communication team, a drive team, a build team, a bumper team, and I think that's it.
Okay. And do you get credit, like school credit for that?
Not really. I mean, it's just a part of our school. I mean, credit-wise, not really.
Okay. Should you?
I think so.
I think so too.
I think it should be a part of your grade, kind of.
So what course, robotics, like if you think about like the skills you just talked about, some of them are here.
Right. Yeah, definitely
All of them.
social and communicator.
So what kind of credits, like think about the credits, like subject areas in school, science, math, history. What do you think robotics, you've done robotics, what do you think might be some connections or correlations to subject areas? Is there math involved? Is there science involved?
There's definitely math involved when you are trying to figure out the right part, if it fits, science, because science is always a definite hands-on subject, and robotics is a hands-on subject or course. But it's definitely, I think it can relate to science, definitely.
Yeah. Experiences that you have where you're doing things that are not for an exam, but for somebody else, a question, a problem. Have you done any of the workplace learning challenges, Capstone?
Well, I genuinely think teamwork is a really huge skill, like especially like when I'm out working on the job, for example, like we go to a house, let's say we get a no heat call. We have to go through a list of things that we have to do in order to try and diagnose the problem. And that takes a lot of teamwork because, I mean, if one person sat there going down the list, it would take all day, if not, a couple days. But if you have multiple people trying different things on that list at the same time, it makes the job go a lot smoother, it makes the job go a lot faster. And in the Career Center, I could bring up an example in our HVAC class. We just recently did a PVC project. So in order for all of that to work, it was like the draining throughout a house. So like you have the toilet, you have the sink, you have all that stuff. And we all had to correlate with each other and say, hey, you need to cut a piece 3 or 4 inches, or hey, you need to put a 90 here, or hey, like it was just all over the place. And teamwork and communication is a huge part of building that.
Sounds like there's some math involved in that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that it correlates and relates to this portrait of a graduate, and I think that all of these skills are on here are completely useful, and it would be a great way to demonstrate that, hey, I'm actually ready to graduate high school. I don't need to take these Regents exams.
Yeah, I agree. So let's put portrait of a grad to the side for a second. Let's just think about learning experiences. Think about, and again, there are lots of teachers doing amazing things. That's not what we're talking about. Let's talk about learning experiences in the traditional way. You come into class, there's content knowledge, you're reading a passage, you're writing, and then you've got to show some growth. You got to finish an assignment, etc. There's a lot of other ways in the world to think about learning experiences. So there's an idea around, in this transition, around redefining learning experiences. You talked about options, broadening the ways that schools think about learning. And I'll give you some examples, and then I want to know if anything else comes up in your head. We have somebody who is, leaving school every day to work to train on a competitive athletic team, maybe travel soccer, but they're traveling and practicing every night. Should that count? It's above and beyond for PE credit. Should you be able to go to the gym? Let's say you have a business. You're cutting lawns over the summer. You're babysitting. You have an internship or a job with a business. Should schools start kind of broadening their look at opportunities within school and outside of school that showcase your understanding of multiple things? Content, portrait of a grad, curriculum, etc. Are there other things that we should be thinking about that redefine learning outside of just kind of the way that we have traditionally thought about it for a while?
Well, absolutely. I think that like broadening how you can demonstrate that you're ready to graduate by going out on internships and, doing something that you find joy in. I think that is absolutely like an effective way to educate somebody. And I really think that, it's very helpful for the school. I mean, it makes the school look good. It builds relations with the community, but it's also really good for the student. And, I think that your point of making it easier for students to graduate without Regents diplomas and everything is an amazing solution.
Gotcha. Any, I'm going to go to either of you. Other things that we should be including in school that you'd love you'd love to see happen?
More
that-
on the outside world.
More in the outside world.
More activity outside. I think students really need to be in nature more and explore, what's outside of a classroom.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just kind of opening the school doors and classroom doors to the world. You said nature. Any other areas? I mean, where else outside school could we think about where these kind of extended learning could happen?
You could also do a museum.
Museums?
Museum trips.
Okay.
Aquariums, maybe?
Anything that you're thinking of?
Museums for
Yeah. So both of you have spent a number of years in your home school district, elementary school, middle school, start of high school. Some of you started high school, and at some point made a decision to come to a BOCES program, come to an Ulster BOCES program. How did you hear about it? And what was kind of driving you to say, I want to leave for a portion of my day for you, for my whole high school experience. But you, as a sophomore, made a decision to come to career in tech. Tell me a little bit about kind of how that came to be and why.
So I heard about it through like my guidance counselors, but there was a lot of talk around BOCES. People actually thought about it as like a negative thing at first until people started realizing, hey, there's some actual money to be made in these trades. And the hands-on learning experience is incredible. I mean, you can't replace that with anything. And the fact that you can only spend 4 periods a day in your homeschool, for somebody who doesn't like their homeschool that much, it's a great opportunity, just a little escape. Right. For me, BOCES was kind of like an escape from my home life. Like, I grew up, I had a pretty traumatic childhood, but my 9th and 10th grade year, I was on the thinnest sheet of ice grade-wise. I almost made it so I wasn't able to come to BOCES. I barely passed. But I think once I got to BOCES, I really realized that I do need to take responsibility for my own actions. I do need to strive for excellence. I need to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to make myself successful. So
that's awesome. And I'm going to turn to you in a second, but I want to ask you kind of a follow-up in that. First of all, I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that you've had some rough spots. And as I listen to you talk, I only have to spend 4 periods in my homeschool. It was my escape. And then shift into talking about these ideas around excellence, holding yourself accountable. What changed? What was that shift in? And because there are plenty of people who go through a traditional school and have a good experience, right? So it works for some, but it wasn't working for you. And so a little bit about kind of when that change happened, and I want to get a little bit deeper as to what do you think actually began to happen for you that you began to take your path more seriously?
I think that when I started going to BOCES, I honestly realized that being school smart isn't that hard as long as you put the effort in. Because when I started going to BOCES, I started getting better grades back at my home school. I was doing really well, honor roll or high honor roll every quarter. And then at BOCES, the hands-on learning experience it was all like a reward. I would go to my home school, I would get good grades in order to do Capstone over at BOCES and make money while I'm at school. Right. So, it was kind of like a reward thing.
So is it safe to say that this, you found this place where you could connect, find success, and that gave you the energy to figure out kind of how to navigate maybe those other spaces that that you didn't appreciate as much with the lack of hands-on, but you were able to navigate that in order to get to this other place?
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome. All right, so let's turn to you, who also made a decision to come to a BOCES program, but you made a decision a little bit earlier. I am familiar with the P-Tech program. I had the wonderful opportunity of starting that program as the first principal there. So I hold P-Tech close to my heart. And that means in 8th grade, you decided not to go to your high school, but to come to P-Tech, right? So tell me a little bit about, that's a big decision.
Yeah, so when I first found out about P-Tech, it was through one of my friends, actually. So when I heard about it, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And I heard they, did more engaging and stuff. And that's really a big part for me, honestly. Like, I can't sit inside of a room, in a classroom, looking at a teacher teaching and stuff. I fidget a lot, so I really can't, be inside of a room like that for a long period of time. So I took the opportunity to go shadow at P-Tech, and I really noticed, like, at first it's on a college campus, which I think is like a very big step for when you're in high school. You're in high school, but for me, I'm in a college campus, and I'm actually doing college classes right now. So I think that is a very big thing for me. But it did help my social skills. So P-Tech does help a lot. And people think like it's a school for people who can't do high school. That's very incorrect. It's a school for those who don't feel comfortable going to high school. As for me, I was scared to go into the high school. I was very scared. I didn't think I would make it there, because with the regents on top of regents and having to just do all that schoolwork, even in middle school, it was just a lot of schoolwork for me to handle, and I didn't know if I can even survive in high school. But in P-Tech, we don't really do assignments. Mostly it is on our laptops that we're provided with. We do a lot of hands-on learning, especially in our robotics team in season, which I think is the biggest thing I love about P-Tech is we do hands-on learning, and that means a lot to me. So
yeah. So you mentioned this idea of being kind of fearful of going into high school, yet you made a decision to go straight onto a college campus. And you're not just doing college classes, but you are a college student. And I think that's important to highlight that, day one when you step on that, you're in a college progression, and you'll meet the requirements for high school along the way. And then you've got some options, you've got some choices, right? Our hope is that students move through and finish their associate's degree and their high school diploma. But along the way, some things happen. You talked about engagement. And so often we have students who after 4 years decide they want to go straight into work, or maybe they want to go to a 4-year school. Maybe they want to finish the program. What are you thinking about now? I know you went to the career in tech as a sophomore. You're finishing your junior year in cybersecurity. So you got some options. Again, you're back at the decision point. What's next for you?
I have not figured that out too much yet, but I either want to take on nursing or be a mechanic like my dad was. But I haven't really thought about that too much yet, but it's something to still think about. I still have a bit of time. So.
Okay, good. I'm not forcing you to make a decision right now at all. And I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be. So you got plenty of time. At the Career and Tech Center, what do you do?
So mainly at the Career and Tech Center. Every day we go in there, we do a do now, and it's normally based on what subject we're talking about. So I'm in the HVAC program. So for example, like we'll talk about like parts of a boiler that we need to memorize because the lingo is everything in HVAC. And after the do nows, normally we'll like get into an activity depending on the time of the year. It could be on boilers, it could be on ductwork, it could be on furnaces, everything HVAC related. We also do some plumbing too because, they correlate, the two trades correlate a lot. And
you probably got some electric in there too, no?
Absolutely, right. There's electric in there too. So HVAC, I honestly think like when you look at welding, electrical, and HVAC, I think HVAC is like a mix of all three of those.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that because I do think, and this is something that I'm in conversation with the folks who are at the Career and Tech Center in meetings that we bring in and have conversations with industry folks. career and technical education in this country is offered, kind of in the same way that it has been for many years. It doesn't mean that there aren't classes that are looking at kind of emerging technologies, but I'm not sure that these kind of siloed 26 different career areas are what we're going to see in the future. You talked about like this kind of crossover and of welding, electric, plumbing, HVAC. And so I've been thinking in partnership with the leadership at the Career and Tech Center around, what is the future of career and tech? Is it going to be that you take HVAC, or do you take kind of the building arts and you get some skill sets built in lots of different areas, and then maybe you have a chance to really do a deep dive in HVAC. So those are the kind of the conversations that are happening both in the field and with the folks there. We're going to have some conversations soon around some of the changes in New York, but I'll go ahead and throw a couple questions your way since we're here. The school structure that you spend part of your day at still, and that you've left kind of the traditional school, has typically 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. They have various amounts of periods per day, 8 periods a day. Sometimes schools have block scheduling. Sometimes they're like on A, B days or rotations. But for the most part, there's 22 credits that you have to get in high school. There's English classes, history classes, math classes, science, electives, gym, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to, throughout, you take what you mentioned, the series of Regents exams throughout. That's kind of how it's packaged up. That's the same model that's been in existence for quite some time. And we are at this place in New York where they are looking to transform what it means to be a graduate. And there's a couple things that they're doing, really 4 kind of large transformations that they're talking about. And in that, and we won't talk about all of them, but the Regents exams will no longer be a requirement to graduation. They're going to be decoupled. That means there'll be an option. You can use them to show that like you understand or you have these skills, but there's going to be other ways to show competency or skills in those areas. So that's one thing. The second thing is the introduction to what I've given you, the portrait of a grad, which is a different set of skill sets. They're about critical thinking, problem solving, global citizenship, communication, cultural competence, and social emotional competence. So my question to you is, first, what are some other ways that we could think about redefining learning experiences outside of what you talked about, which was sitting in there, fidgeting while a teacher is delivering content or teaching, and those periods in school that you had a hard time connecting with because they weren't hands-on. So what are some ideas, ways that students could, in school, out of school, show skill development that you think would be more engaging, more creative? It could be things that you're doing currently or things that you think might be good advice for school people to think about as they're thinking about what should school look like.
Do you want me to go first? I honestly think that maybe if, part of the year, like during normal school, they introduce more of like a hands-on curriculum for the students that learn more that way. I think that would be a great way to, further educate their students and strive for excellence. But I also think like there is a fundamental issue of also like teachers don't make enough. Teachers don't make a lot of money, and that's going to change if they really want to teach that student or not. Will they go to arm's length to make ends meet?
Yeah.
So that they learn the subject that they're teaching.
So that's a whole other series, right? Like the value of educators and how we, how they're compensated, et cetera. And that's a conversation that should be had for sure. So I appreciate you bringing that up. let's go to hands-on. Tell me a little bit more about kind of hands-on learning. Is it ideas that stem from a teacher asking you and allowing you to be hands-on? Is it about bringing other people in besides teachers that are giving you questions or problems to think about? How can schools interact with the real world? Students kind of push out and be immersed in communities. Tell me a little bit about some of the things that happen. I know you mentioned Capstone, workplace learning, things like that. Tell me a little bit about how that might be a more engaging environment for students.
Well, I think Capstone, especially, for example, like with me, like Capstone is what made me want to do good in school, because if I wasn't doing good in school, I wouldn't be able to go out on Capstone. I wouldn't be able to work, because that is a privilege. It's not a right. You know, you have the right to go to school, but you don't have the right to go out and work if you haven't graduated and, you know, completed your education requirements. And I think that is what truly motivated me to start actually doing well in school and to actually start caring about my grades. And, you know, I think it's honestly like Capstone is a reward, you know, for doing well.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
I can say with according to like engaging, I would definitely say it's a big part for kids, especially younger kids. I feel like so they can be part of the big world. Engaging is like very helpful with social skills. So I can definitely say like social skills helped me even like talking to other people as well. And if they do like, you know, during, like he said, you know, during school, they can talk about like, or do engaged like assignments or something. So like, for example, like science, they can do something outside, or, you know, during the summer, they can do like an activity or like a program for next year,
right?
Something like that.
So do you think students? So let's take a couple different ways, right? You have a student who, you know, takes a series of English classes and moves through and learns some things throughout the way. That's great. You have a student who decides they want to do an internship with an author, you know, or you know, they have an internship with an editor. Should that be a way in which students can earn credit towards school, or should we remain in this linear pathway that you have these classes you have to take, and that's how you get through school? Should we begin to think more broadly about the experiences that might show how students are learning, what they're becoming proficient in? Thoughts on that?
I genuinely think we should be more broad about it. I mean, you shouldn't just have to like go through like tests and everything else just to say like, oh, you have a diploma. You know, you should honestly be able to go and get hands-on experience, or like experience just in the real world dealing with what those people, whatever you're studying for, or whatever you want to be, what they have to deal with and what those people do on a day-to-day basis. I think that's more helpful, and you learn more doing that than sitting there reading a book.
Right. You know, personally, you know, I was never, you know, I had friends, siblings who like test taking. They were just good at taking tests, something they were good at. It was never my forte, but I was really good in lab. Right. Like the practical application of what we were learning, that was no issue for me. So I'm not sure that like the way that I was graded in my regular classes was a true representation of like my understanding, right? Because that wasn't, and to your point, like I learned how to do it. I learned how to do school, so I could take tests and get through, but it was never, and to your point, it wasn't engaging for me. It took me a long time to kind of figure out how I learned best in pockets of my schooling. So you all have had the opportunity to be in school for 10, 11 years. Advice. You've got adults administrators, educators who are going to think about how to make changes in school. What's one thing that you want to let them know, or advice that you would have, right? Because your schooling's coming to an end. So this really isn't about you. It's going to be about those who will come next after you. So if you think about advice to help out future generations so that schools are places that that you described with joy, relationships, kind of connect you to the things that you all enjoy. Any advice for those folks who are going to be doing this work? I'll start with you. Do you have anything that you would share? Like, make sure you think of, or don't forget.
It's worth it.
Yeah? Awesome.
I think that giving students the opportunity to present what they've learned in a hands-on format would be absolutely beneficial, not only for the student, but for the teacher as well. It teaches them a new way, a new perspective in order to teach these students and further the education of the students and, just the school in general. If you can show a hands-on way, it makes the school look better. You have your graduation rates are higher, your region scores are higher. Normally if you're doing the hands-on way, you probably wouldn't take a test, but if you can demonstrate the hands-on way, you learn that you grasp the problem. I honestly think that you could go take a Regents exam or a test on this and do pretty well on it.
Gotcha. Any advice?
I said it already, and I'll say it again: be more engaged. I think that is going to change the whole school perspective.
Okay.
Just be engaged.
Awesome. I'm going to give you one last opportunity. Any other final words for the principals, the superintendents, those who are going to be helping to make these changes, your teachers, anything else you wish that you could have had or that was different so that those who come after you will benefit?
Thank all of you for what you do. I love that you have the passion to try and change the systemic problems within the educational system, and I think that is an amazing drive, and it only benefits our community and our students. So thank you.
Wonderful. Olivia, Jada, any last words?
I would just say thank you to those who really built family-like connections with your students. I think that really means a lot.
That's a big one right there.
I
That's
think
a big one?
I think it really means a lot to those who may not have those actual connections with their blood-related family. I think that's a very big thing for some people.
So if the relationships are there, then
I think it would help them want to come to school more. I think it would help the school system a lot.
And
I'm agreeing on that.
You're agreeing on 100% on that. I can see.
100.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all taking some time out of your day to be here. Thank you so much. It's Leading for Deeper Learning, and you are the legacy students who kicked off this episode here with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.